Hey, Chris Ferdinandi here with another Vanilla.js quick tip. Let's get into it. One question that comes up a lot is when you should use arrow functions versus traditional functions. It seems like most tutorials on the web these days default to using arrow functions. So here's a short and quick decision-making guide that I use when deciding how I write my functions. And again, just my opinion. So if you like arrow functions, by all means, go and use them. But for me, I like to default to function declarations. Use arrow functions for anonymous callbacks if you prefer code that's a bit more brief or short, or when you're running into issues with the this keyword, and basically never use function expressions. To me, function declarations are the easiest and clearest way to write a function. They sacrifice brevity for clarity. To me, the function declaration, having that word function right up front, makes it immediately clear what the thing you're looking at is. And because there aren't a variety of ways to handle things like returns, you don't need as much brain energy to parse out what it's doing. So for example, it's very clear here that this is a function that's returning the combination of two numbers. Writing this as an arrow function using a function expression is not actually any more brief when written out this way. It's the same length, the same number of characters roughly, takes up the same amount of space. If I were to write this using the more terse version of an arrow function on one line, it takes a lot more mental energy to understand what's going on. There's no explicit return. There's no function keyword to let me know that this is a function. And so I need to look at it and determine that, oh yeah, this is the arrow function syntax. Oh, I see what's happening here. For anonymous callback functions, like the kind that you might use in various array methods, arrow functions can be shorter and faster to write. And it's usually pretty clear that they're functions because they're being passed in as callback functions to methods that explicitly expect that. So for example, here I have an array of wizards, and I'm using the array map method to handle that array. In this version here, I have an arrow function, and in this slightly more verbose version, I have a traditional function. And I think in this case, it's just as obvious that the arrow function is a function, and it's maybe a little bit easier to write if you prefer that kind of thing. Arrow functions also don't have their own bindings to the this keyword, which can be useful in certain, in my opinion, very narrow situations. In this example here, we have a calculator object that includes a couple of functions, add and subtract. And in the add function, using a function declaration, this points to the calculator object, where in the subtract arrow function, this points to the window. Depending on your desired use or your intended use case here, that may or may not be a good thing. So if you're running into a situation where you want this to be attached to the window or some sort of parent object, you might want or need to use an arrow function. It might actually solve some problems for you. In this case, that might actually be undesirable. In an object like this, you'd probably want this to point to the calculator object and not the window. But it's good to know that you can get around some issues with this using arrow functions. If you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and maybe even share it with someone else who you think might enjoy it. You can also get my daily developer tips newsletter over at gomakethings.com, where every weekday I share a new tip, trick, tool, or Vanilla.js snippet to help you build a simpler and more resilient web. Thanks so much for watching.